people that love it have to know that writing good comedy is hell. It's really hard work. And that's why I think the movie resonated. Right now I'm trying, and we'll see what happens. I'm trying to make the R-rated cut for Norm,
Right.
to do that because the 7 minutes are missing.
Hey guys, welcome back to Twin Flicks. We're always here celebrating the magic of movies and physical media with you. So today I have a special guest. It is Oscar from Vinegar Syndrome, the man, the myth, the legend. And I want to thank you so much, Oscar, for joining us today.
Thank you for having that and or saying that. And I'll pay you later for that really kind introduction. Yes, thank you. Man, the myth, and the legend?
And the legend. Got to go that extra mile. So today I invited you to talk about this release, Dirty Work, on 4K. And there's something special about this release that if some of you out there watching this aren't aware of, that is that you found additional footage that you put in and you named it the Dirtier Cut. And I thought if you could maybe just explain how that journey began and how you found the footage and then get into the restoration work.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. It's one of the, whenever we release a film, every single film comes to us in a different way. With the studio titles, they're usually much more confined. Like we're very limited in what we're actually able to do. We're dictated the rules, and we oftentimes push up against the boundaries. At least as Vinegar Syndrome, we're always going to get the best transfers. We're going to find the best elements. If somehow they were left at a lab, we're able to get those things, bring them back to MGM, Paramount, whoever. So that's kind of the baseline. I usually am like a little bit, I'm not anti-studio by any means. I love studio movies and I love mainstream movies. And, but I'm really like a film preservation first guy, and the confines of having to work within those limits oftentimes like worried me a little bit with the studio titles. So I oftentimes would kind of like, let someone else, like Claudia, special features producer, or Elijah, who's much more qualified as a special features producer or release producer, take on the role. They're really great at what they do. But with Dirty Work, the whole journey began when I got the job at Vinegar Syndrome. I would have these long extended, this is now almost 5 years ago now, I would have these long extended arguments with Joe about movies that I liked, that I don't really know why I like them, and he didn't like them oftentimes. And Joe is, yes, Joe, because we met him last time.
Yeah.
Very particular. He's the curator and the programmer, so he picks the movies. But so that's kind of where it began. Sorry.
That long ago, huh? When you first started, You've been wanting to work on this? That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, the truth of the matter is, like, when you're, I'm going into this with, like, there's stuff that I want to see. That's what I want the labels to be doing. I want them to be digging through vaults.
Right.
I want them to be bringing things, not just making them better looking and more truthful to how they were originally meant to be seen, which is really important. And a lot of, like, Severin does it. Arrow, everybody does this or tries to do this in most cases. But I want I want to see things that I've never seen, that have kind of become the myths and the legends, like me, as you said before. But with Dirty Work, I've been obsessed with the Dirty Work and Norm Macdonald for a really long time. Comedians are really off. Whenever you tell them to zig, they zag.
Yeah.
And when they were originally making this movie, they're kind of given a blank check and said, "Do whatever you want."
A lot of improv.
Yeah, a lot. There was a bit, but it was a very, very tight movie. Frank Sebastiano is a brilliant writer, and all those amazing gags and bits, like, they all come from his brilliant mind, besides a few of the really big ones, which came from Norm, or the other co-writer, and who was also interviewed. But the thing with Dirty Work, which is really unique in studio titles, is normally after you release a movie, the cast and crew, they kind of shut up and they stop talking about what never got to screens. They just say, this is what got on screen, let's talk about this. With Dirty Work, because they're comedians and they're like, a little countercultural, they're eventually, I mean, not even eventually, it was in the first newspaper articles where they're like, oh, there's an earlier cut that everybody liked better.
And I remember that. I remember seeing articles like that, interviews. And I'll tell you, going back to what you said about how comedians always, you tell them go right, they go left.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been doing, like junkets and interviews for a very long time. And the first time when I started doing these, I was always told, never interview comedians. Because they're very, very hard to interview, because they'll purposely try to trip you up, and they'll purposely, you ask them a question and they'll just make fun of the question you're asking. It's not, you can't get most of the time you can't get a serious answer out of them. They always treat it like it's a prank. But yeah, so how did you find the new footage? Because I know Bob Saget, he's been trying for years to get a director's cut made.
Yeah. So the really great news that kind of transformed my whole viewpoint of this movie, and why I'm really like, it's a miracle that this was put out. But I'll double back really quickly and say I tried to get it on 2 previous iterations of MGM lists. And Joe, on the first one, just outright rejected it. The second time said he was going to put it on, then didn't put it on. And then finally, I did, there are a few movies where I was just like, just come on, fucking put them on. They're going to do well. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a lost cut. So I thought it hit with the film preservation background. Long story short, when we submitted this list, which is basically what happens with these studio titles, where everybody here suggests lists. They get filtered through Joe, and Joe says, he like Tinder swipes on them. He goes, no, or whatever it is.
Yes.
And then basically, but with Dirty Work, uniquely with that, MGM's amazing archive staff basically said, oh, we love Dirty Work. Like, we've been wanting to do the earlier cut. They're like, again, it's very important to note that it's commonly known, and we do not use this terminology because it's MPAA stuff, but we don't use any rating or anything like that. We just can't, it's not attributable to this film because it was never released in any
right.
and signed off on by the MPAA. So we can't use anything like that.
Yeah.
But when we brought this up to them, they basically said, okay, so these are 2 things that we have for this, which are 2 earlier cuts. We're going to send them both to you, and you look at both of them. And you tell us what you think based on your research, because they know that we also do heavy research when we go through these restoration projects, especially when it comes to trying to bring something back as it was originally meant to be seen. So they sent us, technically it was around 10 separate video pieces, but they called it the 2-parter, which was one film, and then there's an 8-parter. The 2-parter was around 2 hours, and I watched it, and it was very unfinished. And we ended up including it as the assembly cut, which has 30 minutes more footage of Dirty Work, which was to me was really incredible that this still existed. With synced sound and everything. And these were from video masters. So after they telecinied the original negative, they would do a video work print before actually eventually honing it down, whittling it down to creating an actual film work print.
Yeah.
But I knew immediately that was not true. If you look at any newspapers,
Right.
any discussions of this lost cut that Saget talked about, Artie Lang talked about, Norm talked about, they kept discussing that it was a similar length, or that there was even most recently Bob Saget said the famous line now, which is I think 7 or 8 minutes are missing. And to me, you can't get, 8 minutes versus 2 hours. Automatically, you can know that that's an assembly. So we had to look at the second thing, which was an 8-parter, put them all together, and it was really close in duration, feeling, and flow, almost exactly the same as the very well-known theatrical cut. And we knew that this change happened really close to the end, close to the release.
Before,
then we knew. So that's what happened. Yeah.
So okay. So that was probably maybe it could be even weeks before it was released when they decided to cut it. And I believe I remember I've seen some interviews with Bob Saget where he basically was almost. It sounded like he was almost ready to give up on making the director's cut because he just couldn't find all the footage he wanted and really bring his original vision to life. And I mean, obviously you weren't able to do that 100%, but this is as close as possible to that vision, correct?
Well, we were able to find every piece of footage to match to that video work print, which again, if you look at the video work print that we're working off of, it was not an ideal version. And it was missing some of the sound, the musical design, in terms of tiny little sounds and stuff like that, which we ended up having to pull from something else to surface later. But the entire goal of this was to release a 4K UHD of this thing. We didn't think that it was going to be 4K UHD until we finally were able to locate every single tiny frame of footage that matched that 8-parter video element, which basically, if you look closely and if you you can see it on the, I think it's sent, but if you look at the video that we made, you can see the little negative rolls and you can see timing codes. And so the only way to actually get that high quality image was to basically match that to what was still contained within the video dailies, because they never they made a work print based on this tape element, but in many of the cases, or in this case, they did not cut the negative to this video work print. They only cut the ending so there was a separate cut for the alternate ending, because they switched out the ending. They compressed it to the very famous ending now. But we had to find every single negative roll, and that was done because MGM is incredibly I don't want to seem like I'm sucking up to them, but they really won me over in how they cared about this movie when everybody else on the planet said, look, they sabotaged the movie. And it's no, they cared enough about it to keep it alive until we were able to kind of go through and pick it up again.
Yeah, when you told me that MGM still had all the footage like that, saved the footage, I was surprised, because usually, especially a comedy like this, studios don't really care about these type of comedies. It's just kind of okay, we'll put it out. Once it's gone, whatever. So yeah, that actually surprised me that MGM cared enough about this movie to save all that footage, which is awesome, because that also tells me that they had plans to make an extended cut that just never came to fruition, I guess.
I think, yes, I think they definitely had it planned. And I think when, my theory is, and this is not confirmed, I've reached out to his, through a mutual, we reached out to Bob Saget's widow, and I kind of wanted to dig into this more, even though it's so, I felt so guilty even like reaching out because it's so fresh, and he was such a loved, and he's known to be the kindest person of all time. So she's probably still suffering, but I really, my theory is that it was the first thing when you go into a restoration is that you got to have a lot of enthusiasm because it takes so long. It just stretches you so thin. He had the enthusiasm, and he reached out to MGM. They wanted to work with him, and I think they dug up these two versions and identified that it was something. It was either this one or it was that one, because I think they probably had more video masters, but I think he determined that it was one of these two. And I think that's my theory, at least. This is not confirmed, but it's just based on what they said and what their storage facility said, where it basically was just like, this is what we have based, like, if you can reach out to anybody, if he has any notes, I wanted to find notes. So we couldn't create a director's cut. Because of the fact that this, it was taken out of his hands before he got to make a director's cut, but we have the version that he worked on with Norm and Frank, and like everybody that got so close to the end, and that's why we called it the dirtier cut instead of something else, because of the fact that it's so, we can't confirm anything beyond the fact that this was the last version to exist before it was shifted to the most commonly known theatrical version.
So do you know if Bob Saget was already prepping with notes on how he wanted to approach the director's cut, or?
See, that's what I wanted to find out from her about. But like, and even if I had gotten my wish in my first year of being here, I like, theoretically in my first, it would have already been done. He would have already have passed away. That's kind of the ideal for what we would have found. And I think there was this tricky situation too, where we can't make editorial decisions, we can't make creative decisions, and we have to match it to a version. And we have to, in this particular case, what we have are those confined rules where we need to match it to an MGM sanctioned version, where they were basically open. They're like, these are the two versions we have. We have to match it to the ones that you figure out is the closest to it. And it wasn't the assembly.
Yeah, which again is awesome how closely they worked with you on this. I mean, it's just awesome. So I guess, how. So did you go in and actually find? No, they presented you the footage, right? All the footage.
So the process with the MGM titles, it depends on per title, but in the vast majority of cases, we pull from their vaults, take it to their sanctioned skin location. The cut original camera negative that everybody talks about. Again, we have to talk about the cut original camera negative, which was the theatrical cut, matching the theatrical cut perfectly. And then there was the original camera negative dailies. And those were stored in two different places. One was in the Midwest, one was in LA. The cut original camera negative, LA. And so we scanned that first, and then basically when we went through the work print, I went through on the first pass and determined which sections were missing and the time codes and the negative roll information to properly pull from each of the piles of film. It's like, if you've ever seen dailies for 35 millimeter dailies, it's a lot of stuff. It's like a crazy amount of film.
To say the least.
So, yes. And what we were pulling from were things that looked almost identical to what was already used in the original camera negative. So basically we had to kind of identify the negative rolls and all of the identifying information, not even in the film, but all the information around it so that when we went to their storage facility, because it would be so much film in order to send it over here. We had to work with their archives and their storage facility, where basically they were amazing. Like they really helped us out, and they worked. We had a crazy amount of calls nonstop, and I'm normally a hands-on guy. Like I honestly wanted to like take a flight over. If I had a couple extra bucks in my pocket, I could have. But it worked out in the end. So I think, the first pass we got almost everything. There were 3 sections, which were, I've said this before, but there are 3 sections or 4 sections, I think 3 sections, which were missing, and they totaled like 1.5 seconds altogether. And one was the very beginning, the gay dogs humping. At the very beginning, it was slightly extended so that there was, because if you see the opening of the actual dirtier cut, they shift around the order of things a tiny bit and add something. Yeah. So, and then the second one was the word Hummer being said very loudly. So I don't know how I missed it. And then the last one was Artie Lang saying calling someone an asshole, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Jerk off. He says, sorry, I didn't say that to you. That's what he's.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said jerk off. Yeah.
That's right.
Chris McDonald.
That must have been thrilling for you to actually get all this footage and finally start to work on this new cut. So my question is always, how long from the beginning to end of the restoration and did it take to do all this? I mean, because you also had to scan the theatrical, then you had to do this extended cut or the dirtier cut. How long was that process? Yeah, well, normally it takes place across a longer period of time, because honestly, I don't fucking know why they made it like this. But I was working on like at the beginning. It took, I believe it took around like probably around like 4 months. 4 months from beginning to end. Okay. I think it doesn't sound like that long, but in terms of like just condensed, because I just remember that like time period was just like and I think I really need to give a lot of credit to our restoration team, because I don't do restoration. They also work on this stuff, so I'm counting their work. We have I worked with another special features producer named Mike Catalano, who's a like enormously influential fucking punk badass, and is really close friends with Frank Sebastiano. And he was the one who set up a lot of these incredible interviews, like with one of my heroes, Jim Downey, incredibly famous, really important SNL comedy writer. But all of these things were happening over the course of like around 4 months, and it was really condensed version of everything. And then the rolls happened. You have to realize that the scanning of the rolls I would identify something. I would identify the first round. They would give me notes on how I identified things, send it back and say, do it like this. And then I'll be like, okay, fine. The restoration team did, or?
Oh, no. The MGM's team. Okay. Because they just wanted it to be the most helpful way and most seamless way for us to get exactly. Because imagine if I had written it wrong, we could have gotten a completely different movie.
Oh,
we could have gotten the wrong fucking thing.
That's so funny.
It's about like it's about, we needed to synchronize in terms of like what we were looking for, explaining to them, because it's not if you break it down to its base levels, we can't just say we need this scene where Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang are on like talking on the phone, and they're talking to the gay phone sex line. We can't do that. There's no sound. Like the original negative doesn't have sound on the actual film element.
Yeah.
So what they're working with is purely image, and the most mathematically accurate way is by going by the time code and the negative roll information and the the very mathematical information only identifiable to the film people. The people can look at film and see, oh, that's this footage to this footage. So that's why it took a really long time to first synchronize and then go back. Near the very end, we found out about those missing sequences. I freaked out, and we had to pay money to get those, like 1.5 seconds, and I think it was like 1.5 seconds because we wanted to match that version.
It's kind of like you don't want to half-ass it. You know,
you can't half-ass it. Yeah, there's just no alternative. We would not have put it out if we
Right. Talking a little bit about audio, a friend of mine, Scott Richardson, I told him I was doing this interview with you, and he's a huge fan of the movie. I mean, one of the biggest fans I know of with this movie. In fact, he wanted me to show you a picture of his release there. So I guess he put Dirty Work in the Criterion closet.
All right. Get it out of there. No. Franny from Criterion said that she was like, "Oh, Dirty Work, very cool," and I was like, "Yes, sir. We have people. Dirty Work has fans at Criterion."
Right. So he actually brought up a question about the audio. Yeah, so he says, "I think it was on the features, but I'd love to hear a candid explanation of the audio transfer from VHS to 4K. Also, if there were elements that had to be left out due to technical limitations or lost
degradation. Yeah, one of my favorite words.
Right. Of the original."
When we finally were matching everything up, and this was done by Curtis, who a great restorationist, what we had to work with, what came about in the very late stages of this was Frank Sebastiano, one of the co-writers, did a screening to test audience reactions, and there was a Q&A afterwards. Through this, we could kind of identify that there was a finalized version using an interlocked work print. So basically, the print was interlocked to full coat mag. Problem is that version, that film work print, totally gone. That original interlocked sound that matched to the work print, gone. And we also looked into stems, which would allow us to actually, get actual live sound. A lot of the footage in this movie, including a lot of the tape stuff, was done after the fact. But we wanted to get live sound so that we could get a higher fidelity audio. But unfortunately, it's, they kept what they could.
Yeah.
And I think the truth of the matter is, image is one thing, but sound is a complete other. And I think sound degrades much more quickly too. So I do like that he brings up degradation. That could have been an issue. I don't really find much full coat mag, which is still acetate by the late 90s. So I don't know how much of an issue it is. Even though I'm not going to go too. This is my area, but you can get a lot of delamination and shed from late stage 90s things. But I don't think that was the issue. So what we had in terms of sound materials were we had these video work prints, which were basically not the ideal copy to work from. But we also had Frank Sebastiano's tape, which if you chopped out a little bit before the laughs, you could get a little bit of the added sound design, and we could actually match certain musical cues by using looping. And also in certain situations, we had to kind of Curtis explains it really well in the video. where basically he did this, like he made it sound like it was coming through the loudspeaker in certain situations. But when I first saw it, I was like, what can we do about that? The first gag, because it was so noticeable to me, and it really hurt me that it was, that we're never going to get it back to, like, because the difference between the incredible, like, if you look at the theatrical cut versus the dirtier cut, there's a big difference in the sound quality. But it's tricky. It's tricky because of the fact that we had what we had. We had tape sources, but I think to spin it in a way which I think is maybe useful is that no matter in terms of film preservation, I think I'm really happy that people do notice the difference, because of the fact that many companies could just be putting out films from, like, theoretically speaking, MGM just could have provided us with the work print, and we couldn't have spent all the money, time, research, effort into going and using that work print as a blueprint to get to the actual film. And you could have a no longer lost cut of this, but it would not be, almost like as perfect as I imagine it to be.
Yeah.
But, it's a really tricky situation, because I wish we could have done more, and it's one of those situations where I think in certain situations, I went to a screening of it, hosted by Screen Slate, and I think someone in the audience said, I actually liked it because I was able to tell which sections were not in the theatrical. And that doesn't totally, like, check me out of being critical of it, but I'm still like, that makes me feel a little better. If there's a silver lining, then maybe that's it.
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, you kind of think, well, I don't want people to know the difference. You want it seamless, where you don't notice it. But if you can, you can only do what you can do, and if people are complimenting on it, then you go for it. There was one thing I wanted to ask you about, because in his comment here, he says from VHS to 4K, and that is something I have found people kind of mistaking this for, because I mean, obviously it wasn't just some Maxell VHS tape that they found in a closet. What kind of, I guess, if you can explain what you mean by it was found on tape?
Yeah. So this was a Betacam SP, both of them, because it was in the late 90s. It was a digital tape master. So basically, they're pretty good quality. They're not. It's much better than VHS. It's not a consumer grade tape format. This is what the studios would use for their masters, and so that's what we had to work with. I believe the assembly may have been something else. But to be perfectly honest, cannot remember at that time. But you can tell because of the fact that it was separated into multiple parts. Oftentimes you'd have to get the most amount of information on these tapes. So that's why it was an 8-parter. But the truth of the matter is you can't get a 4K from a VHS.
Yeah.
Regardless of what anybody says.
Well, it's limited. Limited.
Yeah. There's limited information, as you said, limited information to pull from, and it's mud. You can't pull diamonds from mud.
Right.
And what we can use with the mud is, if this is an extended metaphor, you look at the mud and you see what type of minerals are in there, and you say, oh, maybe there's diamonds nearby. And with us, the VHS copy that came about, which I think maybe is also speaking about, is this VHS copy discovered by Frank Sebastiano, which he was miraculous that he actually found it, but it was basically a bootleg tape. It was taken in the back of a theater. You can even see in the we show sections of it where they show someone saying discussing reactions of it with people who saw it, the ones who still were there after the screening. but it was very low quality. So the goal was to mix what we were able to see in the sound design from that to the actual dirtier cut version, which was sent to us by MGM through using and finding every single piece of film material, which according to MGM, no one had ever tried to do, but they wanted to do it. So maybe if they'd been given enough time, they would have tried to do it. But I like to be a little silly about it and say, oh, no, they just wanted us to do their dirty work. Sorry.
Dirty work.
Thank you very much.
I should put in a sound effect.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize.
I know. Is that a picture? Is that dirty work up there? The frame?
It is. That's
picture?
It's my dirty work. That was my gift for myself after I
reward yourself.
It was my reward to myself.
That's cool.
But yeah, that's my little thing.
That's cool. I mean, and I mean, you know, I'm sure you're well aware of this. The general everyday person just does not understand how much work goes into something like this. Like I was talking to somebody who he's not into film at all. He has no, you know, he doesn't know anything about restoration work or film or anything like that. And he was just telling me, he's like, well, all they did was just find a VHS copy and then they just transferred it on Premiere Pro up to 4K and exported it. I'm like,
yes, that is not it, my friends.
Yeah. I'm like, I was way more involved in it than you think. And you explained it, you know, a lot of it already. What I was curious about is color timing. I mean, obviously you want to get as close as possible to the negative, which isn't always possible being on tape. So do you know about how the process of that?
So it's interesting you bring that up because there were slight differences, and I think those are mainly due to there are slight differences in the digital color grading in terms of certain dirtier sections. I remember the hospital section. I don't want to point out like flaws in this, where people can go and like fucking like be like, oh, there's a flaw,
and then they'll go on social media and be like, you know.
I mean, again, this is like whatever. But yes. So we like with the color grading, I'm a little bit out of that area, but they match it to the most commonly accepted version unless told otherwise. Mm-hmm. So they basically just tried to uniformly match those scenes to what the theatrical originally looked like, because that's like Bob Saget didn't talk shit about or Norm didn't talk shit about how the color grading was. So like they were just like, oh, where's my like I'm not gonna cuss in this, but where's my my prison scene, you know?
Yeah.
So but yeah, so that's basically the gist of like the color grading decisions. I wish but it's a difficult situation. The ideal is to find a lab new work print and match to that instead of even like a digital copy, because you have the best possible version. Oftentimes, due to budget, time constraints, sometimes we're not able to find that, and we have to work with the next best thing. Yeah. And we have to, because there's so much more color detail when you're working from film versus from even a DVD or even the last Blu-ray transfer, that it's a big issue. But yes, I think it's really important to note, and I must underline it 1,000 times, when you're seeing something which is claiming to bring 4K out of like video quality stuff, that's not true 4K. It's true 4K is meant to capture the most amount of detail information within said element. And if you are 4King something, it's basically like putting truffles on a piece of shit. You know, you're just adding something which you recognize as being tasting good and it's just mushroom flavored shit. So,
right.
Yeah, sorry.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, again, to reiterate what you were saying is like, there's limitations with different material sources. You can't take a VHS tape and then, bring it to 4K because of the limitations that has.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you guys do what you do best is restore as close as possible. That's why I always say as close as possible, not identical, but as close as possible.
I agree with that phraseology. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
We can't. Every single decision that we do, regardless of how scientifically and research based we approach it, there's going to be a slight variance. Every single person next to the next person is going to see everything a tiny bit different.
Yeah.
So, like, if you see something on a like the wrong kind of monitor, it'll look different in the final version.
Oh yeah.
So we tried to mitigate that as much as humanly possible. And a film print is oftentimes not the best, even the best version of if just scanned naturally, is not exactly how people saw it in theaters because of the fact that it's a difference in how light works. When you're projecting a film, you're blasting light through it to like get it thrown all across the room to a fucking screen, versus like if you're scanning a print, you're using diffuse light to capture the most detail within that emulsion. It's a complicated thing, and I think it's really difficult unless you're touching the stuff and you see firsthand examples. But it just highlights to me, it is difficult, and I understand it when people don't understand it. It makes sense.
Well, that's also why I love some of the videos that you've put out on your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Explain it. My favorite one is still the Southern Comfort video you did.
Mm-hmm. I like that one too.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best ones you put out. And I've, if I talk to somebody and they don't really understand what I'm saying, then I've directed to that video, and they're like, oh, okay, I understand better how it's made. And it's just like, going back to what you're saying, it's like unfortunately, you can never do everything perfect. Everything's going to be a little bit different than the other. But like we were saying, it's as close as possible. I wanted to finish. Scott, he also wanted to say thank you. He said, I'd like to say thanks to Vinegar Syndrome for paying respect to Norm, Saget, Farley, Artie, Rickles, Jack Warden by bringing the definitive release of a trifold comedy that deserved a restoration.
Well, that's really nice. I think I'm really I again once again share the enormous amount of work with everybody else here who is just as excited about this movie. And when it was actually being done, we were all making all these. Everyone was bringing up really amazing, like the doghouse jokes, Norm jokes, basically and certain people who usually don't talk to me, like James, who's one of the first employees, kept coming up to me and was like, "Why? So have you reached out to Artie Lang?" And I'm like, "We've tried through his lawyer, through his manager, right? We've contacted him in 4 different ways." But I think and he kept coming up to me and he's like, I remember I overheard a conversation where he's like, I can't believe we're putting out Dirty Work and we don't even have Artie Lang. He's the only basically he was like, he's the only one who's still here. And
that's true, isn't it? Yeah.
And it was we tried really hard. But that's very appreciative. Yeah. I'm glad that we were able to successfully piece the whole thing together, and that I was really afraid near the end, because I was like, you always think that because I put everything into I was just like, I fought for the movie for 4 years.
You put everything into this. It's like it's your baby.
Yeah, and I was afraid that I was the only person. I felt like I was going crazy near the end, where I was like, what if we put all this work into it and no one buys it? And I was like, fuck, what if I'm the only person who thinks this movie? This is a great movie.
You sold one copy and you're the one who bought it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this though, because honestly, when you sent me the copy and I put it online to showcase it, I did have some people say, "Dirty Work, really? Why would they spend all that time and money and energy on that movie, Dirty Work?" And so I wanted to know your point of view. What is it about this movie that you love so much and made you want to restore this?
Yeah. Like the most easy way to explain it is you can't always explain the movies that are like lodged deep in your heart. And I think Dirty Work is lodged deep in my heart for everything that makes it what it is, which is it is one of the two starring vehicles of Norm Macdonald, who I think is easily the most important stand-up comedian of all time.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Brilliant comedian. One of the most genius people I've ever thought about. You know,
I still go to YouTube and watch his SNL, his news skits.
Yeah.
You know, the weekend updates. I love, and I still go back and watch that, and some of his stand-up routine.
Yeah, and you have he wrote the movie, and he co-wrote it with Frank Sebastiano, who formed the basis of this script. And Frank is a visionary comedy writer who I geeked out the first time I tried to keep it cool the first time I spoke to him on the phone.
Oh, wow.
Because of the fact that I'm such an enormous fan of his style of comedy, and he was my introduction to comedy writing.
Oh, really?
I'm a comedy writer, but what I knew as comedy writing because of the fact that Jim Downey once described his style of writing a joke. And that explained exactly what it meant to me from there on out, what a joke is. So you have his incredible script, which he wrote many years before, or the first ideas of which turned into Dirty Work many years before. You have I'm pretty sure, we keep going back and forth. I'm pretty sure it's the last real major starring role of Chris Farley. I think there's another one which is pretty close. But this was the one where during the editing of the movie, and it was talked about by Ryan Folsey and our special features, who again, George Folsey worked with his assistant editor, Ryan Folsey, who ended up meeting his wife on the set of Dirty Work. This is
really?
This is a movie that influenced every single person's life who's on this film. And I think it's an incredible movie. It is Artie Lang in his first role, which he was discovered basically because he was on promotion for this movie by Howard Stern afterwards. So this is a movie that launched the entire history of, I think, the early 2000s. And
so this is an important movie to preserve.
I think so.
And cultivate. Yeah, I just looked it up. IMDb. Almost Heroes, and then Dirty Work was his last. Chris Farley's last role. Yeah.
And it's Chris Farley playing a really a really grossish, nasty character, which is he's really good at. And everyone is a little sleazy. It's really fun.
Oh man, I miss Chris Farley, man.
Yeah, and he's incredibly funny in this movie, and I think the thing that I keep coming back to is oftentimes when we work on movies, you're working on a movie by a person who's a tyrant or a terrible person or something like that.
Yeah.
You love the movie so much that it pushes you through, and you hear a bunch of people talking shit about everybody else. But on this movie, every single person who we reached out to wanted to talk about this movie, who was able to at this time. You know, and everybody said only good things about everybody else, and they talked about how it was family, and they talked about how kind Norm was, and how kind Chris Farley was, and the writers, and Bob Saget, and they really opened the doors to everyone on their Toronto shoot, and made a really cool movie, really funny movie.
Really, yeah. I mean, and I like to think of this release as, it's really a really nice dedication to Bob Saget, Norm Macdonald, Chris Farley. I mean, I don't know if we would actually get excuse me, I don't know if we'd actually get a release or even a 4K release if it wasn't for your I don't know what the word is, perseverance, I guess, of getting this made. I guess who knows if MGM would have actually pulled the trigger to actually get it done.
They're busy. They have a lot of stuff to do.
Right. Yeah. So it's just like, this is, I always tell people, when you think about, just like, not to just, repeat everything we've just said, but when you think about the talent behind this movie, and majority of them aren't with us anymore. This is a very important movie to preserve and for future generations. Having your kids watch it, your grandkids, and let them experience what these comedy writers and comedians did.
I tried showing my 5-year-old cousin the dirtier cut, and I'm not allowed at the house anymore. No, just no, but like I do think that it's a really important film for, like, if you want to see the the studio system pushed to its limits in terms of not like gore or like titillating material or scantily clad women.
Right.
This is a movie which is purely based on pushing pushing the envelope in terms of what can be said in terms of jokes and skits and following through to a punchline. And
what I like about it too is that it was never done. They never did anything in this film for shock value. And that's what I loved about it too. Is there's a lot of comedies where just like, we're gonna show tits and ass or whatever just for shock value. Just, oh my god, I can't believe they showed that. But it just shows the art of a true comedian and comedy writers, that they don't have to rely on shock value for a film to be great and funny.
Yeah.
I
think I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
For some reason, you just made me think of like I'm not gonna like spoil. It's spoiled in the first few minutes, but I just love the beginning joke where it's like the donuts, where it's a prank about the donuts.
Yeah.
I don't want to give it away, but like the punchline you'd think is the donuts on the genitals. Which is what everybody spoke about for years when they didn't think it was ever going to come out. But the true punchline is the fact that one cheerleader is eating the donuts and being like, "Oh, that's good." That's the punchline, and that's why this movie's really funny. Every single time you think you get to the punchline, there's something else which inverts it and makes it even funnier.
Right.
It's more complex by playing simple than it is by pretending to be something that it's not.
Well, honestly, it goes back to what my dad always used to say. He actually passed away a few years ago, but he always told me, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. The simpler is always the better. And you have to be extravagant. You don't have to do all these things to be funny or to, make a great movie. A lot of times, just simpler is always the better. Scott did have one more thing to say, and that is about the artwork. Although the slipcover was not my favorite, it was a surprise and a treat. So, just in case, this is what he's talking about.
Don't judge a book by its cover, and they say something like that in the essay. But because I knew it was, but with the cover, I think look, this is a it's like you're hitting on a point of like
yeah.
I think I've seen the responses, and like I think I'd say like I think the artist loves Norm Macdonald, and she thought that this is in line with the taste of the movie. I'm really happy that the release did as well as it did, and I think it's because of the fact that people love this movie and they wanted to support the the ridiculous amount of effort that myself and our team here put into this effort, and the art team does their thing as well. And I think they work really hard, and they make shit happen, and they put new art for all these things. And I really respect what they do.
Last thing we'll talk about is the interviews. So I don't think, I can't remember. Did you explain? I mean, did Artie say why he didn't want to be part of the interviews?
So we reached out to Artie Lang's, through Artie Lang's lawyer, his manager, a close friend of his, and we got radio silence. And I think anybody who's followed Artie and his career knows that currently he's like in a place of getting his life back in order. And I think people have said before, and if you follow his situations with relapses, it's about recalling this particular time period. And I think that is what many of us, this is what was implied to us by the people that we reached out to, where this, he would do it if he could, but it's just not on the wavelength right now, and he wants to keep his life what it is, so that that's what was implied to us.
Look forward instead of backwards.
Precisely, exactly. Yeah. But I think it's really important to note that I've mentioned his name before, but this release was really, it's not just my baby. I think it's a shared baby that we both shit out together, because we're dudes. We can't. No, sorry. Me and Mike I don't know if you're gonna have to use any of it, but me and Mike Catalano worked for months to try to get all of these incredible interviews together, and tried to reach out to anybody who had any memories. There are certain people that we reached out to that we did interviews with that made it into the doc or stuff like that didn't even remember much.
Oh, really?
But because we would reach out to I like to reach out to crew members and more technical people.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And some of them were like, we don't remember much. But I think the Jim Downey interview, that was all basically masterminded by the great Jim Downey. And that happened the night before that happened. He had gotten hit by a camera and slipped on ice at SNL 50. So
the 50th?
Wow. So basically we only found out the day before that had happened at rehearsal, and me and Mike were basically just frantically freaking out because we heard he was at the hospital, and we're like, number one, we were terrified because we were afraid that something really terrible had happened. But we found out at maybe 3 a.m. He called me at 3 a.m. and was like, he's okay. He still wants to do it, but he's gonna have an eye patch. Frank also paid for his own. I told him not to do it. He paid for his own trip to Los Angeles to do the second commentary for the Dirtier Cut. I think there's an MVP of this release, it's definitely Mike Hunchback. He put the entire release on his back, just like I did with the technical side, and Curtis did with the technical side. And I think he needs as much credit as fucking anybody. He's a beast. He should be if anybody wants a really great partner on any types of releases, you should fucking talk to Mike Catalano. He bleeds this stuff. So every aspect of this, every part of this was really difficult, including the interviews. The first time he went to LA, one of the interviews, or one of the commentary, one of the things just didn't work out, and he had to leave, and then we're like, okay, we're not going to get that, and then we had to go back, and so it was a crazy amount of work. We had three special because I wanted to do this really big. I had three special features that I just had to say no to because they didn't hit my level of quality. unfortunately, and unfortunately, and what would pass with everybody here. So, we put a lot into this and made it all into something which was a really nice, cohesive thing. In addition, when I started this, I knew we needed to get 2 people. We only got one of those people. We mentioned Artie. I wanted to get Artie Lang, and I also wanted to get Uni Park, who is the Saigon Horror, and Lin Young, the Saigon Horror, and that also came in basically 3 days or 4 days before the when we had to submit everything, because she was working on a sitcom. So everything like this was like a miraculous thing.
That's just talk about how gracious they are to come and work on this with you. I mean, that's awesome that they would do that, take the time out of their schedule to do that. And that shows how much love they have for the movie too.
Totally.
Wow.
I thought she was going to hate the movie. For some reason, and she.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're like nervous?
Yeah.
So before we start wrapping this up, I just wanted to point out that, I mean, I always love the supplemental material. That was before I got into the industry and filmmaking and everything. That was me and my brother's film school. We actually never went to film school. That was our film school. It was the commentaries, the interviews, all the behind the scenes footage. So it's like, I'm one of those people where like the more the merrier. I love supplemental material, and I always tell people, if you really want to start learning how to be a filmmaker, start digging into as much of the special features as you can, especially the commentaries. I'll tell you the one that really kind of put the nail in the coffin for me, as far as this is what I want to do, is the documentary for The Abyss back in like '93. It's like still one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And it's just like, so, personally, I want to say thank you for jamming in as much material as you can possibly get, and the interviews and the commentaries and so on. It's, sometimes, I mean, you may think maybe it's not that big of a deal to us viewers, but it is. We love as much as you can provide for us.
I mean, dude. I mean, I need to fucking say it, man. Mike got 2 fucking commentaries,
which is awesome.
It's incredible for the dirtier cut and the theatrical cut. And there's some people may notice there's swaths of sections which are missing from them. And I wish people could hear that, because I think Frank references it. Because basically we couldn't clear what was being said because it's so long.
Well, let me say is like, generally an actor or whoever will come in and they'll be like, okay, I'll do 1 commentary, and that's it. They don't want to sit there and do 2 commentaries, and then you have to just use the same, or not for you personally, but in general, studios would usually have to use the same commentary for the different cut, and then it serves no purpose. So that's incredible that he was gracious enough to do that.
He's a beast, and in addition to that, both of them are like with Frank Sebastiano, the dirtier cut one, which I think is, I thought it was like the really seminal thing, also features the other co-writer, Fred Wolf, who's really famous for the amazing the fish in the bed and all over the house mansion scene. Very great comedy writer, very famous, works with David Spade a lot as a director and a writer. But I think we tried to put throw everything at the everything into this, and we have a feature-length doc which is directed by my best friend Benjamin Shiba, and it features even more interviews with people, and we have, I think, 10 individual interviews, and then in the actual feature-length thing we go through the entire process of making Dirty Work and all the people, and we get way more people. We get so many different people, like Lord knows I have. We have everybody. Not everybody, almost everybody, but
almost everybody.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I want to congratulate you on the release. It's a great release. I encourage people to get it all the time. Ignore the artwork. Don't judge a book by its cover, like you said. And yeah, definitely pick it up. I mean, it's still available on your website and Vinegar Syndrome, and I believe it's on like Amazon and all those places, right? Yeah. So definitely go pick it up. Yeah, man, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, lovely talking to you. It was. Thank you for highlighting it. I'm really happy that it's done, and that I'm happy that I'm happy that it turned out. Like, I'm happy that we found everything. You know?
Yeah. Now think back when I emailed you one time and you said you're on vacation. And I'm like, oh yeah, you deserve that vacation.
Yes, that is it. That was my vacation. I gained like 25 or 30 pounds like during that, because I was just like every little. It was like the special features in addition to all the film stuff, and then there's still things happening in the film archive constantly. Like, I'm getting in pallets of film every single day. That doesn't stop. So I needed a break. You're right. You're right. I apologize if I was snippy.
Oh no, not at all. No. All right, man. Well, we'll end this, and yeah, definitely have you back on again. It was fun talking to you. And,
thank you for having me.
Check back. All right.
Orgasm after mind-blowing orgasm.
I remember when I saw the film the first time, I was sad that line was missing.
Stop saying dirty stuff for a second, would you?
We knew some stuff was gonna hit people very hard, very quickly.
I've never seen so many dead hookers in all my life.
Lord knows I have.
It could have been a very edgy film.
What the hell was that about? That was Bush League.
Way out of line, way out of line. Have a good mind to go to the warden about this. You know what hurts the most is the lack of respect. You know? That's what hurts the most. Except for the aim.
Dirty Work is very close to the edge regarding what one would consider a definite hit for a large theatrical debut. It was decided to remove certain sections which were seen as a little bit too controversial to be marketed towards an SNL audience.
Previews, you just never know what you're gonna get. You know, I mean, you may have like a perfect cut, and then, you know, all of a sudden, one or two people in the audience, you know, say, I didn't understand this, or I didn't like this person.
So we know that to this date that there were upwards of 2 screenings of Dirty Work, which were more raunchy, which we're calling the dirtier cut.
God, why would you show me that?
The issue for us came about when there was no intermediate phases of these cuts and no work print was left in existence. What this meant was we had to go to the only version of this version that still exists to this day. And unfortunately, that only existed on video. Thankfully, in this case, despite the fact that there was no intermediate elements which would properly represent this cut, we were able to thankfully pull from these original negative dailies the raw, unedited trims and outtakes. We were able to successfully go through with the work print information relating to these negative rolls and pull each specific shot. And using the original cut negative that we already had that matches a theatrical cut, we could add those sections back in.
We always want to get back to the best film element that we can use for the restoration, which is generally the OCN or the original camera negative. Myself and Oscar Becher went through to find the time code that corresponded with the shots that were missing. We then went to our contacts at MGM to pull the corresponding shots for that time code so that we could try to get all the missing footage on film from the OCN. That way it not only was the best possible version, but then blended seamlessly from shot to shot.
So we were very scared that we wouldn't be able to construct a finished version. Thankfully, Frank Sebastiano, who's a longtime comedy writer, actually took video within one of the theatrical screenings of the dirtier cut.
We're at like a mall where parents take their kids, or at this preview, they have no idea what they're seeing.
That's me shaking hands with Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States. Oh my goodness. That's your mom. Give me a Hummer.
So for the first half hour, people are, it's not a stampede at the same time, but they are dragging kids out like the movie within our movie.
And through looking at that screening, even though the footage isn't ideal, we were able to properly match the sound design to that actual theatrical cut.
Note to self, remember to get ass wart cream for giant wart on my ass. It's a little bit past that.
One of Norm Macdonald's tapes gets played through the PA system in the theater, and what he says in the theatrical cut was different than in the dirtier cut. The problem is, in the dirtier cut, again, it was only coming from tape sound, and it was just a voiceover from Norm Macdonald that was basically in there as temp sound.
Even with adult diaper, shitting pants is unpleasant.
So I had to take that and blend that back into the theatrical version and make it sound like it was coming through the speakers in the auditorium without it standing out or feeling, you know, like it was an uncompleted moment in the movie.
Largely with Dirty Work, what we're adding back in is language, which has been changed for a theatrical cut.
What's up, Fruity? Hey, Assbite.
It's really a way of making it feasible for any viewer to not miss anything. Ass Bite doesn't make a lot of sense, but it makes a ton of sense in the context of who Norm Macdonald was and how he did his own, he had his own flavor of things. Vinegar Syndrome has not really done a great deal with comedy. Dirty Work is an interesting example because it's a comedy with its own cult, and we're really serving that fan base by putting this out and doing all the work we have on it.
The overall goal for all of us here was to make this feel like it was a completed version of the movie that people could enjoy for the first time.
We can be definitively sure that we have the closest version to what director Bob Saget, co-writer and star Norm Macdonald, and Artie Lang originally wanted when they first desired this film to be released in its initial cut. We thought that it was a really well done cut. There are certain sections of the film which really bookended the entire narrative. For instance, the beginning and ending with the gag related to donuts on cocks, which you'll only be able to find out about if you watch the cut. Does this make a better film? We argue yes.